Congratulations. My name is Igor Gavrishchak. This is the YouTube platform of Channel 24. We have a live broadcast. Today is December 29th. Therefore, I will ask you to traditionally be active, as you always are. Like, subscribe, comment, write down your questions, and, of course, share our conversation. Our guest is opposition politician Gennady Gudkov. Gennady, hello. Igor, greetings for you and for all the viewers who are now with us. Gennady, December is very good for the main intelligence directorate because there are many operations, including the liquidation of General Kirillov in Moscow itself. And yesterday, it was literally reported that there were explosions near Moscow. Somewhere some train that was moving to the front was also blown up. Let's remember this later. And this is how much Putin is afraid of all this, because yesterday, December 28th, Putin signed a number of laws that toughen the punishment for armed rebellion and crimes against military service, and also approved a new strategy for countering extremism. It states that the main threat to extremism is Ukraine. And it is also there, among other things, there are no signed decrees, there is no parole. There will also be very serious measures if some rallies are not authorized there. How afraid is Putin of all this? Why is he signing this, or are these some planned steps by Putin? His regime is held together by bayonets, and by bayonets are regimes that must constantly whip up the degree of hysteria and repression. That's all. Therefore, they have now generally embarked on a serious task. They have declared everyone terrorists, war criminals. That is, they are simply doing what Goebbels ordered. If you do some terrible things, you blame everyone else for doing it. Putin acts directly according to the canons, according to the precepts of Nazism, according to the precepts of Goebbels, and in addition to the fact that they are passing terrible laws there, draconian laws that strengthen refractions. Now they are already in prison for everything. They are also organizing total control over the population. A huge number of cameras have been supplied. The only country where there are hundreds of thousands of cameras with personal identification installed in various public places, and not only public ones, but at the entrances, on sites, in parking lots in front of the entrances of the store, and so on, with personal identification, which, by and large, has been banned abroad as a way to interfere with private privacy. All this information is collected. Now a new system is being prepared called a tiny atom. That's what I call it. When every citizen, his whereabouts will be known. That is, today everyone uses a mobile phone, and now an all-Russian system for recording the location of citizens on their mobile phones is being created. That is, it will be possible to track the movement, the location of a citizen from the IDO. He gets into the personal identification cameras. He gets into the control and surveillance system. He is listened to. He is watched. And this happens online 24 hours a day. Putin is terribly afraid of a shift in public consciousness. He is afraid of the growth of some internal protest tendencies, and, of course, they are. But there is also such a mechanism. This is the entire repressive system. It must prove every day that without it, the government is nothing, cannot but defend itself, will not survive, and so on. And therefore it still invents threats itself, even where there are none. This is the typical behavior of any so-called gendarmerie police structures during a dictatorship, especially a military dictatorship that has still surrounded the war. This, in fact, is approximately how the situation is now in Russia. People are afraid of everything. They are afraid to speak. They are afraid to communicate. They are afraid to write to each other. They are afraid of any manifestations of any civic position, and such an atmosphere of total fear. Therefore, this, so to speak, internal migration, the so-called people go into this internal migration, because to go beyond it means to be behind bars for many years. At best, if you are not there because of torture, if you are not killed, so to speak, because of the zeal of the executioners, and so on and so forth, that's something like this. And of course, I would like to talk to you about the plane crash of Ember, who flew from Grozny, Baku, which was shot down by Russian air defense, and crashed in Kazakhstan just yesterday. Putin called Aliyev. He asked for forgiveness, but how did he do it? He did not say that these were the culprits of the Russian air defense. He said that there was an attack by drones of the armed forces of Ukraine on Grozny, and, accordingly, air defense worked. How much will this situation affect relations with Azerbaijan? Because I read this morning that even Azerbaijan is somehow changing the rules for the stay of Russians in the country, because various migration changes with Russia are being tightened there, and accordingly, Azerbaijan will also do this in response to Russia. And here is the flight zone over Russia. Here is the main company of Israel refused to fly. How much can this affect? Because many specialized publications write that now in civil aviation, there will be problems with flights over Russia. Yes, apparently yes, unfortunately, because it does not affect Putin, but it affects ordinary people. Their relations there are with family, with relatives. There is a huge migration today. I feel it myself, these problems. And it is clear that everyone feels a huge number of broken families. At least they have the opportunity to somehow communicate there, communicate from time to time, visiting third countries. Now this is becoming problematic. What can I say here? Of course, the behavior of the Russian authorities is just, as they say, a scoundrel on a scoundrel and drives a scoundrel, because it was necessary to tell the truth. What does drone attack mean? Every day, you have drone attacks. Then you will say that you are not responsible for anything, that you will close the space. Do not risk other people's lives. You can have your own, although they don't want to be theirs. They want to risk other people's lives. That you have idiots sitting there on radars, on radiation systems, and on launchers, which, so to speak, cannot distinguish birds there from a giant liner. And then, of course, the vile behavior of the authorities, like we have nothing to do with it. And who has to do with what? And who has it to do with what? Birds that pecked, so to speak, to holes, the fuselage of the aircraft? You are to blame. You could not organize. You could not warn anyone. You could not close the sky if necessary. You pretended that everything was fine with you. Then you need to be honest. We close such areas for the flight of airliners, because we are not responsible for anything, not a damn thing. In our country, they launch missiles at all targets, because they are afraid of their own skin. I'm talking about management. Therefore, of course, the most despicable behavior, which reflects the thesis that has already been confirmed 100 times over that. For example, the country's leadership is non-humans. These are non-humans. What is there? How many times can you say the same thing so that people can be convinced that this is really so? People will say that this is a terrible mistake. We grieve. We sincerely sympathize. We will help all families. We will organize this. We will do this. It happens, yes, we are to blame, but we will try to fix the relationship, and most importantly, to help all those families, and at least try to somehow reduce, although it is almost impossible, the bitterness of loss. But you see, it's not our fault. It's the Ukrainians who are to blame. They launch drones. Do not invade a foreign country, and no one will let drones into you. Therefore, just once again a reminder that it is impossible to deal with Putin and hope for some human remnants of his quality. Man has eradicated all human qualities in himself. This is some kind of creature obsessed with only one idea, the preservation of personal power. He has nothing else there. Gennady, Putin also signed a decree, and now the Taliban and their attaché are not terrorist organizations. And this morning there is already news that the Taliban have launched some kind of attacks on Pakistan. As I understand it, terrorists for Putin are not those who kill, not those who commit terrorist acts, but those who are undesirable, and those who are pleasing can easily be recognized as non-terrorists. We must clearly understand, make a diagnosis. The worst of all Hollywood scenarios happened. The terrorist seized not any missile launcher, submarine, or any ship. Terrorists have taken over a country, a huge country filled with nuclear weapons. They gained full control over the country, over this nuclear arsenal, over the army, and they began to unite all the terrorists of the world in the fight against humanity. Look at who Putin's friends are. The Taliban, a terrorist organization, are clearly, so to speak, frostbitten sick. Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas. Who else? The most reactionary regimes in the world are, in fact, the terrorist regime in North Korea, Iran. This is the most reactionary cannibalistic regime in Africa, and so on and so forth. That is, there is a rallying of all this abomination, this whole thing in the world under the auspices of Putin, and therefore, for him, terrorists are his own people. And all the others who are waging war against this, the state, and so on, are strangers, they are enemies. As a matter of fact, it is like in a crooked mirror, when, so to speak, the top becomes the bottom becomes the top. Everything is transferred from head to head. And, of course, they are trying to blame. I say, they act according to the Goebbelian principle, accusing the enemy of what you are doing yourself. That's all. And I don't understand how they want to negotiate with Putin in the world. Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, of course, you are a terrorist, you are a scoundrel, you are a war criminal, you have blood on your hands, but allow us to shake them with you, because we want to come to an agreement with you. Yes, you have occupied a foreign country, you have killed hundreds of thousands of people, you are threatening us all with destruction. Will we shake your hand? And let's agree with you that you will kill others, and you will not touch us. Here I am, when I look at all these coplacious fusses around Putin, I have the feeling that they have gone crazy. Many political leaders, and those who are journalists, newspapers, publications, and so on, they do not understand at all who they are dealing with. They do not want to understand. They, or rather, do not want to understand. They do not want to understand that Russia has been captured by terrorists who threaten the whole world. They do not want to understand that these people are insane. These are people who have been crossed off the list of people. Those people who have various moral, ethical, and qualitative qualities. As a matter of fact, we all see this. Every step, every day today confirms. But how can you talk to a person who staged a large-scale missile attack on Christmas? He disrupted the holiday for everyone. You can, of course, celebrate, pretend that you do not notice that bombs are falling on Ukrainians, on families, on children and so on cities, on residential areas. Of course, you can go for a walk and say, what's going on? We're walking, they're in trouble there, and it's good for us that everything is fine. The Christmas trees are standing, so to speak. The Christmas markets were working. Everything is fine. You can behave like this. But this is, by and large, despicable, and secondly, it will not last long, because terror tends to penetrate into every country, every family, and so on. And all this will turn into a huge war and huge destruction. But you can pretend that everything is fine and not notice that Putin is the main terrorist. Where are the steps aimed at recognizing Russia as a terrorist state, a sponsor of terrorism, etc.? Where are the next steps? Everything is over. It all ended with the order of the International Court of Justice, which, in general, no one, by and large, no one is complying with. After all, how can Orban or Fico invite Putin to Slovakia, to Hungary, if they have to arrest him on an international warrant? Then you will say that we do not have any international court of justice. We act on the basis of our principle of conciliation and cowardice, or venality, no matter who has what. Orban is obviously, so to speak, doing this for money. We don't know why Fico is doing it. There are also suspicions. But it's clear that you're serving the devil. You're blowing the dust off him, so to speak. Thanks to you, murder is committed every day. Your cowardice, your acquiescence, your justification of terrorism. If anyone is to be tried for justifying terrorism, it is Orban who needs to be tried. Gennady, just yesterday I spoke with journalist and investigative Bulgarian Risto Grozev, and he says that he has insiders, allegedly in future possible negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Allegedly, Moscow is not against Ukraine moving towards NATO. But there are conditions for U.S. troops to withdraw from Western Europe. Allegedly from the Czech Republic and Poland too, and the Czech Republic and Poland are against such agreements. Do you think it is realistic? How possible is it that Russia can agree to such terms of negotiations? I don't understand the words, negotiations, with Putin at all, to be honest. But if we use this not a very correct word, because it reminds me of negotiations with Hitler, I think Putin is just mocking. And let the Americans leave, and let this, and let that. Wish lists are called. Impudent wishes. They have no significance for the subject of negotiations, but just show off. I would say a harsher word, but it is prohibited. Here it is. Therefore, what can I say? The dictator begins to show off. The dictator begins to show off. He feels weak and begins to show off. There is no other way to put it. Gennady also, there is another word. Again, it is prohibited. It is more understandable, more accurate, more emotional, but this vocabulary is prohibited. Gennady, do you think that on January 20th there should be the inauguration of Donald Trump, and on January 17th the president of Iran flies to Moscow to sign strategic agreements with Russia? How can this affect? Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, arrives in Russia on January 17th to sign cooperation, and there are some agreements with Putin. Dictators of all countries unite. Nobody has canceled the slogan. So they unite because they must support each other so that they are not defeated, so that they are not taken away from them, deprived of power, sent to the International Court of Justice or impaled there. But they are doing this, unlike the civilized world community, which considers itself the progress of mankind. They are doing this, and we only have another Ramstein, at which, so to speak, they discuss how many teaspoons of ammunition to give to Ukraine. The guys work. They understand that they work not out of fear, but out of conscience, because they save their own skin. And we need to unite somehow. This is the only way to withstand the wavering democracies now. So they meet. They don't care about Trump, not Trump, inauguration, not inauguration. And what do they have there? What are the problems? Nothing threatens them yet, and they still want to negotiate with Putin. That is, you need to kill everything more than anyone else, bomb harder, attack harder, threaten, so to speak. And then everything is fine. Democracies are in retreat. Who wants to fight thugs so much? So they are taking advantage of this. The unwillingness of countries of freedom and democracy to seriously oppose, so to speak. Also, maybe Iran in the conditions. What do they want now, of course? The air defenses were restored. Israel smashed everything to hell, and not a single plane was shot down, and they all came back to one. That is, it is clear that Iran lives without an anti-missile defense system. They were worried, twitching, where to go? To Putin. Putin still has it. He can help with production, placement, sale, and so on, probably. But I assume this because they have nowhere else to go. To China? But China does not seem to want such an image of a black country of them. Axis of evil. So they turn to Putin. But this is my assumption. I think that many other issues will be discussed there, including what to do with a gas pipeline that will soon go through Syria to Europe. But nevertheless, I think that there they will discuss, first of all, the war, how to survive, how to win, how to achieve a bloody result that is beneficial to them. Gennady, with the arrival of Donald Trump on January 20th, what do you expect? Any movements, some negotiations, some pressure from the White House? And in general, do you have negative expectations, either positive or neutral? I had neutral ones, but now they are shifting towards negative ones. I saw yesterday how Elon Musk described the situation in Germany. Here you just don't know whether to laugh or cry. You see, genius in business, it does not automatically transfer to politics and other things. You can be an absolute genius in business, in general, be fantastically brilliant, so to speak, and completely incompetent in politics or in any other sphere. Musk thinks he's the only person who understands anything in the world, more than anyone else. But his statement, they caused shock in Germany. And, frankly, I agree with this shock, with the shock reaction of the German establishment to Elon Musk's statement. He supported them there, said that the path of Germany in parties, like the Alternative for Germany, would be fine. But the Alternative for Germany considers Putin its friend, and almost a partner there. And here you just don't know whether to laugh or cry. And the influence of Elon Musk, despite the fact that analysts and political scientists say that a black cat has already run between him and Trump. But, as they said, that apparently their interests are so deep, serious, and great, that this conflict will not have serious consequences. If Elon Musk influences the administration's position in this way, which we learned about once again in Germany, supporting Putin's friends, then my mood is beginning to change, so to speak, towards negative expectations in connection with this upcoming inauguration of Trump's inauguration as President of the United States. I don't know. I don't understand it. Gennady, do you think that Elon Musk has such a serious influence on Trump's entourage and Trump himself? Why did they have this incident there, according to political scientists? Elon Musk considers himself almost the main one in America, almost the president. Trump does not like it very much. He is already beginning to dislike it very much. But the intertwining of their interests is so serious that it forces them to act together. That is, in terms of behavior, Elon Musk is a person who is the great cardinal of America. There is a president to whom I tell what to do, and he listens to me. There is such a situation. We see the role of the so-called great cardinals in a number of countries. They now exist. I will not talk about specific countries. I think you know this very well. Therefore, it may be so, but you need to understand what position this great cardinal takes. You can be Richelieu, or you can be someone else, if we take historical analogies. Richelieu was just for the fortification, for its influence, of course, not without its jumps there, but nevertheless. Therefore, the figure of this great cardinal, which Elon Musk took on himself, is not very much for them. And so far, this figure talks more about collusion with Putin. I don't understand the reason. I can't understand. It's just some kind of individual, it seems to me, psychological perception of everything. What is happening in the world now? By a person who is far from politics, it seems to me. He thinks he's the world's leading politician. But I can also think that I am one of the leaders of the organization of ballet art. Thinking, as they say, is not harmful, even useful. But you can take your thoughts seriously only when they are recognized by the whole world. At least, that's how it is. And, to be honest, this alarms me. All these statements are alarming, all these. And we will agree with Putin here. And we have negotiations here. Let's be honest. What the hell can there be negotiations now? What? From a position of weakness? From the position of losing? From the position of conciliation to appease the aggressor? Forgiveness of all sins, all deaths, all murders, and so on. Should there be such negotiations? What are we talking about now? He would have been slapped in the face first, and then we could talk, but from a position of strength. And if you talk from a position of weakness, it turns out badly. Here he begins to show off, and let the Americans leave from there. Putin should be there. We are not against NATO. But let's postpone it for 20 years, and then we'll see. And you recognize Crimea for me, and you give me the Perm Volist, and you give it to me, and then I will sit down at the negotiating table with you. If the army had fled, if, so to speak, there had been an offensive, there would have been other conversations. Do you understand? And when they brought the situation to its current state, then they said, let's talk now. Who do you want to talk to? With the main terrorist of the world. Go, shake hands with him, smile, pretend that you are pleased to talk to this scoundrel. Go, yes, show the whole world. Sign that you are snotty. Gennady, thank you for the conversation. We will wait for January 20th, when Trump comes, and I really hope that your negativity will turn into a neutral attitude, and then into a positive one. I can only dream about it. I really want to be wrong. In my negative forecasts, I really want to be wrong, and I will even be glad that I was wrong. Because this situation is extremely important for us, not only for us, but for the whole world. And this situation must be resolved correctly, so that no one is tempted to blow up the world order and threaten the world with self-destruction, in the sense of destruction. I really want to be wrong. Therefore, let's, of course, wait for January 20th and hope for the best. But so far there are some doubts. We will wait and meet. Thank you very much for this conversation, Gennady. Thank you. Gennady Gudkov, an opposition politician. I will ask you to traditionally like this video, subscribe, comment, and, of course, share our conversation. My name is Igor Gavrishchak. See you on the air of Channel 24.